Welcome to Creator to Leader. Are you struggling to connect with your ideal customers online? Are you confused about the most effective way to market your business? If you're ready to become the go-to expert in your industry and stand out from the crowd, this podcast is for you. Hey, I'm Eugenia. That's Eugenia in Spanish, but you can call me E. My mission is to help entrepreneurs stand out online so that they can grow their businesses. I do this through comprehensive marketing strategies, impactful content plans, and storytelling leadership. We both know you are running on caffeine and big dreams, so let's dive right in. I have been waiting to talk about SEO on the podcast for such a long time. You've heard me say that SEO is this very important thing, but I needed an expert. It wasn't any expert. I needed the expert. So when I met Greg, it was an immediate yes for me, because not only has he personally had success with SEO, but he's in the trenches because he has an actual SEO agency. What does that mean? That he knows not only what works for him, but what works for a lot of people. He's able to spot the patterns, connect the dots. And that's exactly the type of person I wanted to bring to you. So he's going to tell us what's working across the board and how you can actually use this to grow your personal brand. But let me tell you a little bit about Greg. He's a partner and a CMO at Search Tides. That's an SEO agency at the forefront of digital marketing. His work is pivotal in shaping the future of effective SEO. He utilizes large language models, and don't worry, we're going to get into it. He's going to explain what it means. And he's navigating the AI era of the internet. He has collaborated with industry giants like Home Depot, like Second Home growing up, Zillow, Second Home right now, Western Union, FanDuel. Welcome, Greg. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, thanks so much, Eugenia, for having me on. I'm excited to be here. And wow, what an intro. Yeah, I'm Greg Brooks. I'm with Search Tides. We're a hub for all things SEO, search, AI, LLMs, the future of additional acronyms. And I'm happy to share it all.
Well, first, I was stalking you online, and I read that your agency has cracked the Google algorithm. So immediately I was like, wait, what does that mean? So I need to ask you a million questions about that.
Okay.
But first, though, we need to talk about this. You are a professional poker player for 6 years. And That's so fascinating, because I can imagine that it gave you so many tools for the world of business, of marketing. What are some things that you took with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Wow, that is a good question. There's a few different things I took with me. I think one of them is this idea that there's a difference between actual risk and then how risky we think something is, what I call the perception of risk. Usually something happens, we're like, oh no, this is scary. It has a high perceived risk. But if you look at it more closely, it's actually not as risky. And so I think with poker, I kind of learned that lesson over and over again. And ultimately, I bring that with me a lot. I think the other thing that I bring with me a lot is just how people work and what we all want. And at the end of the day, we kind of all want the same sorts of things. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to feel listened to, and we want to feel connected with others. And that's ultimately how we interact as consumers also.
I love the idea of the perception of risk, because everything in the digital marketing world feels risky when something new comes along, because we don't fully understand it. And when something new comes along, also a lot of fake advice comes along. So we don't know how to differentiate. And it feels like you're sitting at the poker table and you have to go in blind and and hope that no one is bluffing around you. How do you manage risk? And how can someone who maybe is less risk tolerant can manage risk?
It's a great question. I think the best thing is to weigh the other side. And so I think the first thing is just to be honest and know that our initial reaction to something is simply that, it's a reaction. And so then we should take it a step further, and we should actually walk through analyzing and being able to define the risk of something. And then I think we need to define the risk of the other side, which is, what if we don't do this? Because a lot of times doing nothing is incredibly risky. In digital marketing, if you do nothing different, think about what happens. You erode over time. And so there's actual risk there, but we perceive that as well, I know that this is the thing that's worked for me in the past, so it's safe to do it again, which is actually probably wrong. And so I just think in general, we can be a lot more experimental and we can try new things. And the only real risk that comes from that is kind of getting shiny object syndrome and being like always looking to try something new for the sake of trying something new, as opposed to looking to improve upon the systems that you have. And then when you find something that works or you think can work, really giving a sufficient amount of time so that you can like let something play out. And that's a lot of what SEO is. It's doing the things that you know will work and then not getting immediate feedback that it's working. And so you continue to do them over and over again because you know it's important and because you eventually will see that progress.
That's interesting. We talked about the risk, almost like a table, the risk of doing, the risk of not doing. Do you think that when it comes to business decisions, specifically with SEO, is holding a way of staying in the game, just like in poker you hold, but you're still playing? Do you think we get the luxury to hold it or not?
Oh, another good question. I don't think we get the luxury to hold it. I think we're really even moving in or out, and staying in the game of poker usually costs money. So maybe you don't fold, but maybe you continue, but you have to call a bet. And so there is actually a cost to doing that. And I think the same is true in digital marketing, the same is true in SEO. It's about going out and doing something and knowing that there's a cost of doing nothing, which is you typically move backwards.
I love that. And specifically with SEO, and I want to lay the ground about SEO because it's one of those terms that everyone talks about and everyone says they understand, and we kind of feel silly if we are like, wait, but I don't really understand. So correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm putting this into simplistic terms. SEO is what we do so people find us on Google when they're searching. Let's say you have a course for someone to do farm to table recipes. So if someone
Right.
Googles farm to table recipes for the 4th of July, you show up and they find you. That's SEO, correct? Like taking those measurements in your content so you're found. Is that
Yeah,
correct so far?
exactly. And I think that's how SEO is defined today. And I think in the future, it'll be also including like, do I show up on ChatGPT when asked about a certain topic? Am I the answer for that? And then in the future after that, it's whatever new models come out in the future, am I relevant for that? So I think that over time, the definition of SEO is expanding because all of these things, ChatGPT, other LLMs, search engines, they're all algorithms and they all function the same way. They're still programmed by human beings.
Mm.
And we have this idea that we put this stuff into a box and then we don't know what happens. But actually, what AI really is us dictating, take 10 steps and then go to the left and the thing goes to the right. And then we have to, no, okay, go back to the left. And that's really all this stuff is. While we are still the drivers, we're still the ones that are programming and creating these things. And that's essentially like SEO on TikTok or on Instagram or on YouTube. It all operates the same way as well.
It's testing, it's not a recipe. But I have seen clients get very disappointed because they download, I'm not going to name brands, but the most famous SEO plugin for their website. They write their blog posts, their SEOs, like their readability is green, SEO is green, yet they're not showing up and they're putting all this work into these blog posts. And they do also the hacks on Instagram of putting your title in your name, and they're doing all the right things. They're not showing up, or paid media is eating them up. So if you try to look for a fitness coach on Google, probably you'll get 10 paid results and you're going to get down to the 5th page. So it's like, okay, I'm willing to put in the work and tweak things, but is this even working right now? Is organic even still viable today?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing, and especially for someone who's a personal brand, is to understand that each marketing channel are two types of choices. So the first choice is, do I do this? And then the second choice is, as a result of me doing this, what do I lose out on? So the number one mistake that people make is, I'll do everything. No, definitely don't do that. You should have your number one thing. And most likely, if someone's asking those types of questions, they might have their number one thing, they might not, but they just need to become more confident with it. So that's number one. Number two is, when does it make sense to put SEO and organic into that pack of things that are really important and relevant and worth my time doing? Most likely, if you are a brand that is national in your reach and you're not niche. So if you were a fitness trainer, like you said, most likely you're tied to a geographical area. And so that's not national, that's local. Or if you are another business that is based in one geographical area, or if you're a personal brand, most likely building an audience is going to be the thing that's going to have the best return for you in the medium term and the long term. And so if you're thinking from a marketing perspective, then the question to answer is, well, what are the platforms that are best for me to build an audience? And so website is one of your platforms. Social media those are more platforms. Specific sites on social media are additional ones, YouTube versus TikTok versus Instagram. And if you are kind of like a one-person show, it might make sense to build up some of those other channels first, because that's going to have a disproportionate effect compared to a website. If you download Yoast or another, all-in SEO plugin, and you're essentially looking to just fill out the forms and do the things, well, that's what everyone else is doing too. So SEO is very zero sum. What are you doing that's better or that's more than what others are doing? So if everyone's filling out the same descriptions and titles and everyone's putting work into blog posts, why your website versus somebody else's? And Google uses links, aka link profiles, to determine which website is going to be stronger than another. So you might be a personal brand looking to talk about fitness recipes, but you might be competing against giant websites that just have lots of recipes that are available for fitness, whether it's like bodybuilding.com or, any Healthline or anything like that. That's not a battle that you're supposed to win on search and on organic. So a lot of people try to do that and they look out and they go, this doesn't work anymore. And it's like, that wasn't supposed to work. Why should the internet trust one person over here who doesn't have 10,000 websites saying that they're important and worthwhile because they're linking to them, whereas this other website has millions of people coming to it every single month and they have on-site metrics where they're performing really well? And the answer is they shouldn't. And so I think like the problem with SEO that people miss is it's not for everyone. And if it is for you, then you should have an understanding of how it fits into it. And I think a lot of personal brands or smaller businesses that are kind of getting on their feet have this mentality of doing everything that they think is best practice, when in reality, that's really not. Like, that's trying to do, what does it say? Like, a jack of all trades is a master of none. And you really have to hone in on some stuff when you're building out your channels at the beginning of your path.
Ooh, okay, so much to unpack here. First, number one mistake, you don't have your one thing. When you say one thing, you mean your one thing as in a channel, or your one thing as in the topic that you were talking about? Like, do you see the mistake of, oh, I'm everywhere, I'm on social media, I'm on Google, YouTube, all the places? Or is it a mistake that you're trying to be fitness in general versus just being fitness over 40, for example?
That's a great question. The answer is both. So if you're starting out, you don't have three different things. You don't have the repetitions of making good content. So you have like what you're able to make today. And you also don't have brand equity. So your name doesn't mean anything compared to anybody else's name. And you also don't have what I call like any sort of scale through people. Like, you're probably yourself or you and one or three other people or whatever it is. And that's really not that big compared to larger companies or mid-market companies. So how do you proceed in that environment? And the way that you proceed is, and this is what people used to call like niching down or whatever, but it's actually, what's your unique combination of things and your experience that enables you to have a unique understanding of how things are, which then would enable you to be the perfect fit for a smaller group of people, but you're the perfect fit for them. And so even on this interview, Eugenia, you've called out that I used to play poker professionally, and now I'm part of an agency and a company that specializes in search. So there's a cross section of a background that I'm the perfect fit for people in a certain field, that based on my experiences, this company could be really helpful, or it has deep insights into how these different industries work. And that exists for everyone. And so fitness influencer is great, But what's even better is fitness influencer for moms who just had a baby in the last year, because that's what you did as well. And then over time, sure, you expand that and you just become fitness influencer, but it's because the quality of what you're creating increases over time. You gain more knowledge and experience, which allows you to be better, and therefore allows you to compete on a higher level, which allows you to compete on a wider level. But before you've explored that, like, yeah, that's where you should be starting for sure.
And the second mistake was not understanding if you should put time and effort and money into organic versus paid. And you made the comparison of going national and local, and basically David versus Goliath type of mentality. Like, you might not have the resources and the credibility in the internet world to come up and show up organically on search. So did I understand correctly that it's better if you are, sometimes a lot of these smaller businesses are making multiple six figures, so they are ready potentially to invest in additional channels, but they are not yet at a place where they are mind, body, green, like huge publication. Does it make sense for them to start with social and building your traffic through social and then putting time and effort into your blog? Or is it a good idea to go from the beginning and start building that traffic when you are smaller, under six figures, multiple six figures?
I think if you're a personal brand, you have to understand that you're competing in an arena where people want to work with you because they like you specifically. And so what marketing channels enable that to come through more? For me, that's social, for sure, 100%. And the reason why that's the case is because my 15-second Instagram post about topic X could feel dramatically different than someone else's exact same 15-second post about topic X. And so when I'm a personal brand, people want to work with me specifically, that needs to shine through. Once you get enough of a following, then you kind of just start moving into additional marketing channels. And at that point, like, if you are able to promote something and bring real traffic to it, okay, great. Now we're coming from the perspective of, now all of a sudden you can start to go on to more channels, because you can have someone. It's not you being the one who needs to write the entire post. It's someone else on your team who's able to do that thing. It's not you being the one who needs to go outreach to websites and ask for links. It's somebody else or an agency being able to do those things for you. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah.
I kind of went off on it. Yeah.
What would you invest on first? I'm curious. If you're ready to take that step, would you invest in going on a PR tour, or would you invest in working with an agency like you? Like, should you get the movement around your name online before you go into SEO, or should you go into SEO and then start building your name being around?
Well, so I'm assuming that this person already has a following on some social media channel or something like that. And then, so the big challenge of a personal brand is stopping to be a personal brand and becoming a business that exists without the personal brand. But we use personal brands at the beginning because that can basically expedite the process of getting to a certain size. So once you've gotten to that size, now it's a conversation of creating leverage that exists outside of yourself and creating assets that exist outside of yourself. Unless you just want to be the face of this thing forever, in which case continue to be the face of this thing forever. Keep building out your social media channels. Have a website where you can have offers and you can send people to sign up for your newsletter so they can stay in touch with you. But if you have a mechanism where you're already generating new traffic, whether that's through social media or through a website, like, keep that. Now, if you want to start a transition to an asset and make something that's sellable or has value outside of yourself, there's two things that need to happen. Number one, like, you need to be detached from that result. So if my website only gets traffic when I direct people to my website doesn't have any value. It doesn't matter if it has revenue because it's completely tied to me promoting it. Number two is, it can't be my name plastered on everything, because then the brand just exists based off of my name. So typically brands go through a 3-step process. Step number one is, it's just me. I'm the face, I'm the name. Then number two, it becomes a brand that is basically attached to me. It's my brand, but it's not my name, but I promote it. It promotes me. There's a cross-pollination of it. And then number three is now it's become bigger than me. It's not just about me anymore. It's about, going with the fitness thing. Maybe there's 20 different people that are writing articles or creating social media content or whatever it is. And now I have an asset that's existing outside of me.
And that's how I see a lot of big brands that they've moved to that space, right? They've even created separate accounts and separate profiles. And it makes sense, right? It's like this, I've seen a lot of valuation of YouTube channels. And to me, that's ridiculous. No offense, but to me, that's a little ridiculous because no one, if I bought someone else's YouTube channel with 5 million followers and I started showing up there, I'm not going to get the same views. So even though you have 5 million followers, it's not really a transferable asset without the creator.
And typically those deals are structured with like very heavy on the earnout side. So it's basically like, hey, if I buy this thing and then all of a sudden no one shows up, then that wasn't what I paid was not the actual value. So you have things called earnouts in that instance, and there's minimums and requirements that unlock different purchase prices. Or typically they have like 2 to 3 year transition periods for the face of the brand where it's like, hey, year one, we're going to onload into the business. You're going to keep doing exactly the same way that you did as if you own this thing yourself. Year two, we're going to start incorporating additional people or faces or whatever it is. Year three, you're going to be phased out as a face of it. And then it's going to be done. And you're getting an earnout. So whereas if you buy an asset, that's it. You get your money today and you're out tomorrow because there's revenue coming in. And that's what like SaaS is a really good example of that. Like you have revenue, you have committed revenue. So you have these different sorts of things, but like all of that is a fun conversation. Ultimately, it still starts with you as an individual building an audience. And if this is a conversation about how to do that as a personal brand, it should be doing that with your face and it should be focusing on areas where you can position yourself in a unique way based off of your own past experience. Like being a mom, not rare. Being someone who's into fitness, not rare. Being a mom who's into fitness, now you have like a combination of things that are very relevant to a specific other group of people. And you can speak from needing to balance family life, maybe even work life also, or whatever it is. And, so everyone has those things. In the future, things will become more competitive and consumers will have more choice. So businesses will need to do more of these things as well.
And that's fascinating and leads me to my next point, because I really wanted to talk about AI, especially when you listen to this interview to this point, you're ready to go, but you're a little overwhelmed by all the options. And there's this resistance that I see about people saying, I don't want to go into AI. And, you have things like Google Maps predicting your traffic with AI. So we've been using AI maybe without fully knowing it for years. And you are very effective of helping people leverage AI SEO with large language models. Can we first break that down in terms of large language models? Are there other different types of models, or what does it mean using that for SEO versus other types of AI?
Totally. No, it's a great question, Eugenia. So basically, like here's where things are at. There's a lot of fancy words to describe the same sort of thing, which is I'm a computer programmer and I'm building this program to be able to do something specific. Now, in ChatGPT, that could be to answer any question that gets asked of it or to have a conversation with someone. In Google, it could be to give someone relevant search results to their questions. In Maps, it could be to provide the fastest directions from place A to B. So there's specific goals in all of these things. And at some point, it's just essentially a process that's made by human beings to let a computer program run and do something that we are hoping it will be able to do effectively. That's all this stuff is, the very base level. And that's existed for 30 years, for 40 years. Like that literally used to be when you turn on your computer, that's what's happening. It's like, okay, boot up this operating system. And then when somebody puts in a password, if it's the correct password, give them the screen that has everything. If it's incorrect, make a little shake. That's all this stuff has been from the beginning. So it will continue to be that way until we create AI that's literally like, it's called AGI, until they get smarter than humans, which all bets are off. And that's probably going to be a long way away. because the human brain is the most complex thing that we found in our universe thus far. So what's an LLM specifically? It's called a large language model. And what that means is it's just a type of AI, it's just a type of computer program that basically has seen a lot of different words, images, videos, or whatever. They're called a data set. And it adds them all up together. And then it says, okay, I've now been quote unquote trained by all of these words or images or videos. And now when a question is asked to me, I'm going to respond back word by word and what I think is going to be the most likely next word. And so it's literally like when you type something in a chat GPT, it guesses the next word of its response. And then it goes, okay, this is the most likely next word. Okay, now this is the most likely next word, but it's just all happening so quickly that it just feels like it's talking to us. But that's all an LLM is. And all these AI things are just programs that have a purpose. And it can be, your air conditioning to turn down the system. And you're like, I would like this room to be 74 degrees instead of 75. Okay, cool. Now there's a sensor that detects it and it turns off air conditioning if it gets to that level or not. It's all sort of the same stuff.
So what are ways to leverage AI for SEO and compound question? Can you do it on your own? Are those tools available, or are those tools available only for agencies or working through a third party like you or someone else?
Yeah, good question. So if someone who's creating a brand or personal brand, like you should be on the lookout for AI tools that enable you to do things more easily and save you time. You should be thinking about AI as if it would be hiring someone additional. So you should not be thinking about AI as I'm going to get something to do something automatically that I have no idea how to do. And I'm just going to let a computer program magically do that for me. We're not close to that yet. But what you should be thinking about is you should be thinking about, I have kind of like a co-pilot or a collaborator with me or someone that I can go back and forth with to then create something together that will take me less time than it otherwise would have to create it on my own. So I'll give you one example for SEO specifically. You can basically go to ChatGPT and let's say that there's an article that you want to write about a specific topic. You can go into Google, you can type in the topic that you want to write about. You can take the top 5 articles there and you can paste them right into ChatGPT and you could say, hey, ChatGPT, can you kind of like write up outlines for all these articles? Can you tell me what all the subtopics are of these articles? And then you'll be able to be in a position where now you kind of have an understanding of analysis of what all of these articles are about. And then you can say, well, I want to talk also about this topic and this topic and this topic. Can you make an outline with all of this stuff? Then you could write up a draft, give it back to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you remove the fluff from this article? And now the fluff from your article is gone. Hey, can you check to make sure that I'm hitting all of those subtopics that you talked about before, or did I miss any of them? And you can kind of go on and on. And at the end of the road, you can have an SEO optimized article that's going to be about the right topics there's no way for that to be magically written for you, but you can kind of see the back and forth that happens when you have a plan. And the end result is this is going to be way easier for you compared to how you had to do it in the past, which is do all that research and that refinement, that analysis yourself.
Do you recommend asking ChatGPT for keywords that are trending in your industry? Because I've done the whole ask a question where you look for a question and then you see what people are asking about that question. And I don't know if it's my industry, but I find that the questions are not very useful. Like, what is a personal brand? I don't think that my audience is wondering what a personal brand is, or should you start a personal brand? I don't think that my audience is that, like, they already decided that that's what they want. So should you trust ChatGPT or some AI tools to give you the focus keywords or trending topics that you should focus on for your content?
So I think what you've identified, Eugenia, is to be able to use these things to come up with ideas as opposed to definitive, I blindly follow what I'm being told or what I'm being given. So you could get that list. And then you could say, my audience doesn't have those questions because of this, this, and this. Here's who my audience is. Can you come up with more questions that might be more relevant for them? And I think what happens is we interface with these tools and then we either say, this is right, this is not right. And then we either use it or don't use it. But we miss that middle part, which is refining. And you're like, hey, this is relevant, but this is not relevant. Here's why this is not relevant. Can we try again? And then you'll probably get something that's a little bit closer or a little bit more custom. It's learning as you have a conversation, but you have to have a conversation. It can't just be prompt and then I like it or I don't like it.
Yeah. It's hilarious because now that you say that, if I ask my husband to go to the store and get me milk, and then he comes back with 2%, and I'm like, no, I wanted almond milk. It had to be without gums. You wouldn't just tell someone, just go buy bread. You would tell them, this is what I want. This is the bread. And it's hilarious that we ask ChatGPT, can you make me a blog post on this topic? And then it doesn't sound right. And we're like, oh, it doesn't work. Well, right. You didn't give it instructions. If we do it when we ask our husbands to, or our wives to go get milk for us for the store, we should give and prompt ChatGPT the same way.
Yeah. And that only happens because we did used to ask our partners to go get milk and they'd always come back with the wrong one.
Yeah. Even Instacart. That still happens with Instacart. So
shout out to Instacart. You got to use the replace function,
Yes. I have a question for you to end this because, Greg, you're really a visionary leader, and speaking to you, I can tell that you are a wealth of information. And here on the podcast, my mission is to empower business owners to start seeing themselves as leaders, not only as creators. It's this high-level view of yourself, of the impact that you're having on people. Leadership doesn't come from the corner office or from corporate or having, as you guys do, over 60 employees. Leadership is a choice. And you are a great person to ask this. How can you first show up as a leader in your space, in the SEO space, to start incorporating those leadership, whether it's behavior, consistency, the topics, the way you approach a conversation, the connections that you make? Like, what are leadership moves that you can start making right now to start elevating your personal brand from just being a creator to being a leader?
I think there's 3 levels. There's leading, there's managing, and then there's also executing. And the first is to understand that, like, I'm not one of them. And I'm also, by the way, not all of them. Like, these are just some parts I play on TV. Like, my life is not content creator. My life is not leader. In this business, in this moment, I may be serving myself, the business, the best to put on my leader hat. In this moment, I might be serving myself better to put on my content creator hat. And so I think the first is just understanding that that's not my identity. That's just a thing that I'm doing in the moment, which is appropriate. And then I think the second thing that's important is to just be authentic. And you can't fake caring. There's no hack to be like, how do I manipulate the perception of my attitude in a way to get people to think I care about them and have their best interests in mind? And so the answer to that is, like, you have to actually have the best interests of others in your mind while simultaneously balancing your own belief systems and your own incentives and your own prerogatives. And so the reason why these are complicated questions or answers is because that's like a lot of stuff that you have to do. So I think if I was to summarize it in a couple of different bullet points, it's number 1, you're playing a part in a particular moment. Number 2 is you must care and be your authentic self, which means that some people will hate your guts, which means that some people won't like you. And that's totally cool. And number 3 is, like, you have to actually care. If you think that you're better than someone else, you're probably not a great person to be around at parties. But beyond that, other people will just feel that you think that you're better than them. And we didn't choose so much in our life. I didn't choose where I was born, when I was born, what my parents were, how I was raised, what area I grew up in, what type of school systems I went to, whether or not there were things like religion in my life. Like, I didn't choose any of that stuff. And yet those things dramatically molded who I am today. So who's to say that the person that you're interacting with, like, you wouldn't be in their exact same position if you had gone down their pathway, most of which, by the way, they didn't choose. So I think the future is very much about people who think that they've earned something and people who understand that this is just like this big open dice ball of randomness and it's all good. And we're just all lucky to be here and to be hanging out. And someone is willing to spend their time and energy helping you with your vision. That's the thing that you should be most grateful for in the world. And if you think that paying someone money is what that transaction looks like, then you will see it literally as a transaction. And you'll never be a good leader because your attitude will be transactional in nature when it's about fulfilling someone, sure, physically with money, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because you're not dealing with drones. We're dealing with human beings who we could wind up being the exact same person to if we had gone through somebody else's situation or vice versa. So I think just not taking ourselves that seriously is an important thing too.
Let's say someone's listening to this and they care about you and they're like, I want to go support you. Share with them what's something that is exciting to you right now and that you would love their support with. And whatever it is, it doesn't have to be big or grandiose. Anything matters, but it's something that you're excited about right now in this season of life. And how can the audience support you?
I think my number one wish for the audience is to understand that we as a society right now, we're at the brink of like what I would call peak otherism. We're being conditioned to point fingers at people and say, nah, that's not me. That's not my clan. That's not my group, whatever it is. And we're doing it. So we're forgetting our most like human natured components of us, which is we're all just different versions of the same thing. We're all literally human beings and we all got dice rolled into different like ways of living. And so have a little softness towards others and also like stop taking yourself so seriously because you're just another dot out of the 7, 8, however many billions of people we're on this planet. But also if you are looking at that and you don't think that that's also the secret to business success, let me tell you in a very capitalistic way, you're wrong. Like you will never become a successful leader by stepping over the backs of others. You can be successful with that attitude, but it will eat a hole in you every single day. And your only value will become about money. And that's no way to live. And the worst part is that'll be a self-imposed prison that you chose. So you, again, have a choice. You can either be a real leader who is respectful and appreciative of others and for their time and energy and their literal life force that they're working with you on, and you or not. And you can either choose to see others in society that way as equals or not. One leads to happiness. The other one leads to misery. You get to choose.
That's a beautiful way to end the conversation on algorithms and AI. And it sounds very machine driven. And at the end, it's people behind it. And I love that. How can we get in touch with you, ask you more questions, and follow everything you're doing?
Totally. Well, thank you for that opportunity to show. We're at searchtides.com. You can follow us. We have a newsletter where we talk about these sorts of things all the time. LinkedIn.com/searchtides, YouTube.com/searchtides. We talk about search, SEO, the future of search, future of AI, and the next era of commerce that's emerging. So I'm Greg Brooks. Thank you so much, Eugenia, for having me on.
Thank you, Greg. See you soon. I hope you loved this episode. If you connected with the podcast in some way, please rate it and review it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That is the #1 way you can support the show. And because sharing is caring, share it with a fellow entrepreneur wanting to become a leader, not just a creator. I am so grateful for you. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me a DM over to @eugenia.woo. That's @EUGENIA.WOO. And if you only send me a microphone emoji, I will know that you stayed till the end. Thank you for listening. See you soon.